actually identifying, within our communities, having safe, active, multimodal pathways for our communities. But here's the question: how are you going to get people on those buses?
Great question. We spent the thick end of $50 million on public transport, mostly buses, but that's only half of it. The government puts in another $50 million. So there's actually $100 million spent on our public transport. It would be cheaper to put every one of those passengers in an Uber taxi, quite frankly. So we've got to be this is all around the country. Regional councils have a responsibility of running public transport. And it's important, it's all about community connectivity, critical. But boy, can it be done a whole lot better. The school buses work quite well, but when you look at the patronage and the numbers, the figures are horrendous. Every passenger fare, I think it's, no, I won't put the number, but it's horrendous. It's just like $27, $30 for every passenger fare when you look at the cost of running public transport. That's why I say it'd be cheaper to put everyone in an Uber if you ran little Uber vans around for a lot of it. So I just think the whole public transport issue, school buses is important, but we've got to look at how we can run public transport better. I'm actually Deputy Chair of the Regional Transport Committee, and public transport all around the country is a nightmare.
Yeah, we often see the buses flying from Katikati Hub.
Yep. One thing is, I think we have to educate people that can use buses to realise that it's a reasonable option. Because I know people, not many, but it would be perfectly feasible for them to get on a bus rather than drive their car. For those that can, we should encourage them and make it attractive for them to do so. But I'm gravely concerned, as Ken has outlined, at the money that's poured into public transport to get the outcome that we do.
My question is though, John, did you catch the bus to this meeting?
No, that's what I say.
What buses are on the weekends?
I can just add that Shane Jones, when he was Associate Minister of Transport, visited our Mayor of the time, and one of his comments was, well, what forestry worker is going to hop on the bus with his boots and chainsaw? And you're absolutely right, it's not practical for the vast majority of us.
Those of us who want to catch it would like to actually have it to catch.
Yep, sure.
I think it's a good example of what I was talking about earlier. Someone, presumably somewhere, said, would you like public transport? And somewhere you guys said yes, and they said, great, we'll organise it. Well, that's where you went wrong. You shouldn't have left them to organise it, right? Probably like Ken says, you should have picked up the phone and just ordered a taxi and be done with it, because all that's happening now is you're paying an inordinate amount. The people that voted with their feet, as in their feet aren't on that bus, right? Those buses are empty the whole time, and if they wanted to implement a public transport thing, they should have started out on a very small scale with a pilot and said, let's see if we can fill a minivan on what we think is our most promising route. And when they got that full, they could then start and say, this is the next most promising route. But instead, some brainy person, and it will be a bureaucrat, I guarantee, said, no, let's put on mega-sized yellow buses, and we'll drive them around for 20 years, and we'll just tell people they should use them. Well, they've been telling us, and it's not that the people are deaf, it's just that it doesn't suit the people most of the time. It suits the school kids, but the school kids were getting to school on buses before we ever dreamt up the yellow buses. So we don't want 100 million spent on public transport. It's the wrong way.
If you tint the windows, nobody can see that.
Yeah, well, that was another trick, but we won't go there. I wasn't on there.
I don't have a magic solution for how we get people on those buses, but I do know a couple of things about the buses. And one is that the Ministry of Education, they actually have a responsibility for ensuring these students get to school within different distances. So I know that they may have somehow managed to give that responsibility to regional councils, but I don't understand that. So I think the Ministry of Education still must hold some sort of obligation to take care of the school aspect of our buses. Now I hear the school part of the bus run is working really well. That's because everyone within a minute of school can get on a bus. So what it should be is within a kilometre and a half, I think. So everyone else within that space should be walking, riding their bike, or finding another way to get to school. I have university students within my family who are trying to catch buses and they're competing with the school students. It's not ideal from their perspective. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have buses for everyone. We definitely need the school buses, but and I understand that they do fill up the buses, so it looks like our patronage is good. But it's at the expense of our ordinary people who want to get to where they get to, you know, that aren't heading to school. So I think there still is some work to do in that space. Finally, I'm really a fan of the buses on demand. I see that they're happening across the region, not everywhere, and I support buses on demand in a pilot to be either on the Eastern Link, the eastern suburbs, absolutely somewhere else, but there's some good solutions already. We just have to use them differently perhaps.
Awesome. I agree absolutely and wholeheartedly with Angie's korero, and I wanted to understand or position that the idea is around understanding the innovations that are possible within public transport. So there's a critical failure when you tend to rely on a one and done solution to a problem. I think there are multiple solutions to this problem. One thing for me, I'm from Whakamarama, to catch 2 buses just to get to town, one to get to the state highway, one to get to Tauranga Girls College. Terrible time. So it's about modernising the system so that it works for a whole range of people and ensuring that people have options. I agree also and echo the sentiments of just keep telling them to use the bus. I'm not going to use the bus. It would be akin to you telling me to grab my horse and 1, I will need a big horse. 2, I will need a big bike. I'm not going to use a bike or a horse or a bus. Thank you.
I'm just going to use the opportunity to segue into, I've heard so much debate about roading and transport, not from this meeting, but from this morning's meeting, right through to this meeting. Maybe when that TNL is finished to stage 2, that's going to make using buses more attractive for everybody. Because I'm like swearing, if I want to catch a bus somewhere from Te Puna, I've got to go to every other town to get into town and the stop off. So maybe the TNL might make that more attractive, because we are the worst town in the country for 1 person per car to get to work. And we need to stop we want to talk about saving our environment. But the other thing was, what I wanted to add to, contribute to, was that we, so Pare, Ricky, Rion, myself, all sit on the NZTA forum for the Northern Hapu. And I also represent the NZTA for stage 1 of the TNL. So I've been NZTA rep for a decade. Now, we push our issues, our community issues, to NZTA to get them done. One thing there I want to talk about is I can't see why under the Local Government Act, other communities, non-Māori, can't do the same thing. We actually have the same rights under the treaty. But, you know, we pushed for stage 2 to be funded, us iwi, because the government couldn't see the penny. If you had to stop stage 1 where it was, there'd be a nose-to-tail traffic jam all the way to Auckland. So they funded, we were a huge push in that, they funded stage 2. Now it's Katikati's turn to think along the same lines. You stop at stage 2, the Golden Triangle will not flow back to Waikato and then back through Hamilton to the port of Tauranga. And that's what you need to be, champion of the Golden Triangle.
We know who to see about our bike.
I don't have just one more thing to say. I have 100 things to say, but I will only say one more thing. Just carrying on that public transport theme, because it does need a lot more talking about, because of the huge whack it takes out of the budget, right? You're talking about, earlier on, the earlier councillors were talking about, you know, where the money is going. Well, this is a perfect example. By the time you've got the staff, plus the public transport budget, there is 150 million, 200 million, somewhere in there just gone. It's gone, right? Back in the olden days, now some of you people should know a bit about the olden days, I went to Tauranga Boys College from Te Puna. It involved picking up one bus at the end of my road, which I walked 2 k's to pick up. It was a quiet road then, and it still is now, Lockhead Road. And we then changed buses at Clark Road, and we then arrived in Boys College, and guess what? This will always be a shock to all you newcomers. We all went in at the speed limit, at the peak hour, right into school, right there. So that's the first thing. Something, we actually did stuff better back in those days. You need to think what's happened since. Secondly, the school buses were independent of public transport, and it was never a big budget issue. You never heard people saying the school buses are exorbitant. So that worked fine. So this whole public transport, mixing it up with school buses is sort of a way of making a bad thing not look so bad. It's just terrible.
We just have